The Greg Kelly Show.
All right. Latest is Joe Biden. Of course he's staying in the race. And of course, yeah, he is staying in the race. I mean, after all, why would he suddenly start to care about the well-being of this country, right? He's never cared about that. It's always been about Joe and his family and that silly house and the houses, the homes, the clothes, all that stuff. Not about the country. It's about power and perks and lining the pockets of himself, his family, friends, associates, you name it. Joe is calling on all the favors. You guys, I need you right now, and they are stepping up. They're stepping up. I still don't think it's over. I think Joe will have to get the hell out. He's got a big adversary here, and his name is Barack Obama. And I think that it's time. I just have a feeling. Look, you're about to hear from a guy named David Axelrod. David Axelrod is basically the spiritual guru of Barack Obama. They're very much in sync. And when Axelrod's speaking, basically Obama is speaking. And are they just going to sit by and watch this happen? David Axelrod on CNN. Cut 9, please. Cut 9.
There are certain immutable facts of life, and those were painfully obvious on that debate stage. And the president just doesn't seem to he hasn't come to grips with it. He's not winning this race. He's more likely, if you just look at the data and talk to people around the country, political people around the country, it's more likely that he'll lose by a landslide than win narrowly this race.
All right. It's more likely that Donald Trump will win in the landslide than Joe Biden will win at all. Just observing what I've observed over the past couple of years and everything in our country and the stuff that's happening behind the scenes and the stuff that they will deny to our faces, then ultimately acknowledge. I just don't see this playing. I don't see Joe Biden being around in November. Do you, as the nominee? Maybe, but I don't think so. I still don't think so. Got Democrats, more and more of them are speaking out. And then I hear the big pushback is, well, they have no leverage. Those are Biden delegates, and he can do whatever he wants with them, and he's staying in. He's staying in no matter what. And the New York Times is calling him to withdraw. The Wall Street Journal calling on him to withdraw. Everybody, the establishment, you could say the establishment, but it's the Democrat establishment. Where is he going to be without the establishment, without getting all that cover? I mean, they just might start looking into his finances. They just might start looking into his business dealings with foreign countries and Hunter. They may start doing some real investigative work. Maybe the Department of Justice might even say, if you don't go, we just might have to investigate you all over again. You want your post-presidency to be delightful, or do you want it to be a horror show? That could happen. That really could happen. Now, everybody is now seeing what we have seen and talked about for 3.5 years, Joe Biden's feebleness, right? We've all seen it. But, if you're busy, you're going about your life, and if you're not seeking out conservative media, you're just listening to what the fake news doesn't tell you, you're not going to know what you found out 2 weeks ago at that debate. But now I guess you can say the quiet part out loud for them, not for us. Although I'll tell you, even on me, there was pressure. Don't say anything about his brain. People didn't want, you can't, on social media, they really frowned upon it. If you said something about cognitive, I mean, who the hell are you? Are you a doctor? No, I'm a human being with common sense. Do you have to be a doctor these days to say what everybody can see? It's funny. You know what they call that? Gaslighting. So there was a remarkable interview, and when the fake news steps up, that's when Joe's in real trouble. And he's been in trouble before with the fake news. He's been down this road before. I'm not getting out of this race. That was the message right up until the day he quit, all the way back in 1987, when he got busted for lying. I'm not budging. And then he left, and then he budged. Here's the big moment, shall we? Not a big moment, but it's just very interesting to hear a doctor. Doctors a lot of them are reluctant to speak out about somebody they haven't treated. But when you can see it from the space shuttle in orbit, I think you got to say something. And this guy's really good. I'm not sure of his name, but Tom Yamas from NBC News is talking to him. And Tom is one of the bright lights in the fake news universe. He actually went to Ukraine to do some stories. He actually gave Melania a break. I like Tom. He's a million times better than Lester. Listen to this conversation. It really is something else. He's a Parkinson's disease specialist, a medical doctor, neurologist. Go ahead.
To talk more about those 8 White House visits by the Parkinson's expert, I'm joined tonight by Dr. Tom Pitts. He's a quadruple board-certified neurologist. He sees patients with Parkinson's all the time. He diagnoses it. I want to be completely transparent here. You've never examined President Biden. From my knowledge, you've never even spoken yet to President Biden.
Been in the same room as
and we're just going to use what we have so far, which is what we've seen, the president's interviews, and the information coming out of the White House. Sure. So my first question to you is, as somebody who's a neurologist, what you've seen from the president over the last 2 years, what you saw at the debate, the last few interviews, the way he speaks, the way maybe he walks, have you noticed anything that gives you a red flag as a doctor?
Oh, yeah. I see him 20 times a day in clinic. I mean, it's ironic because he has just such classic features of neurodegeneration. I mean, word finding difficulties, and that's not, I couldn't find the word. That's from degeneration of the word retrieval area.
He's also overcome stuttering, though. Could that be part of that, too?
No, this is not a palatal issue or a speech discrepancy, which is very different from a lemino dysfunction, actual word retrieval, where you pick a similar question or talk around the issue, plus the rigidity, monotone voice.
Wait, go back to that, the rigidity. What do you mean?
Rigidity, loss of arm swing, standing up lordotically. You notice when he turns, it's kind of end block turning. It's not a quick turn. So that's one of the hallmarks of Parkinsonism is rigidity and bradykinesia, slow movement. And he has that hallmark, especially with the low voice that said was a cold hypophonia. A small monotone voice like this over time is a hallmark of Parkinsonism. I could have diagnosed him from across the mall.
Here are some of the symptoms from Parkinson's. We just had him up there on the screen. If we can put him back. What about the movement? Some people have pointed out the way he walks. Sometimes it's not very fast, small steps. Is that something that is common in people who are battling a disease like Parkinson's?
Yeah, it's a hallmark. Shuffling gait, we call that, so little steps. Loss of arm swing from the rigidity. When we walk, we have a nice cadence. You notice he doesn't really swing his arms. And end block turning, meaning he kind of pivots around his foot. If you said, hey, President Biden, he wouldn't go like this. But
I also know, tell me if I'm wrong here, it's very hard to diagnose Parkinson's, isn't it? It's not simple. I mean, I've heard that it can be.
It's one of the easier movement disorders to diagnose, actually.
Right,
but it's so clinic. There's very little other. And I'm a Democrat. I always say about this.
Right.
It's just like, this guy is not a hard case.
But I've had relatives who have gone through neurological issues, and I've heard that sometimes Parkinson's is not very easy to nail. You have to take a lot of tests.
It's early on. If you're just presented with like hallucinations, that could be a variety of things, or just the cognitive problems. That could be Alzheimer's versus Parkinsonism, and that becomes a little nebulous. But once you start manifesting the hallmark motor symptoms,
right,
slow movement, rigidity, mass facies, hypophonia. I mean, if a med student did not pick Parkinson's on the test, they'd be remediated.
So let me ask you, if you
wait a second. You hear what's happening here? He could tell from across the mall. He was watching. Look at that. I just love it. So much truth. Where has this been? I'm not a doctor. I knew it, but you're not a doctor. You don't know it. That was the whole thing. Gaslighting. I mean, I'm so grateful that I'm on the right side of history, right? Because I didn't need that debate debacle to set me free. I knew it. I've been using my eyes, my brain, all right? Like people should. People, citizens. You don't have to be a technocrat. Thank God this guy. I love this guy. You know, just finally saying the quiet part out loud. And he's about to say something kind of political. I don't care if he's a Democrat. I love this guy. And he's totally right in the comparison he's about to make. Keep going.
Let me ask you, if you had, and I know you have no idea what happened in the White House, but a neurologist coming 8 times in 8 months, does that tell you anything? Is that, I mean, I know you're just sort of speculating here, but does that tell you anything or no?
Well, I mean, I don't know if they're like the best of friends or something, but that's a very specific, he's a movement disorder. That's a subspecialist in exactly what he has. And there's very few young people, like a Marine Guard. Most people would be med boarded out for any type of movement disorder at a young age. Like if you had Huntington's chorea, early onset Parkinson's, dystonia, bad essential tremor, you're usually med boarded out. So I highly doubt there's...
What does that mean, med boarded out?
Med boarded, mean the military would not let you, if you have seizures, for example, you cannot usually be in the military. That is, you are
so
medical
you're saying you don't necessarily believe, and they're not saying this, but they said there's thousands of military members that go to the White House and are treated there for health reasons.
Yeah.
You're not buying that that's a random military person.
No, that would be very odd to just see a random movement disorder case at the White House, especially a young guard. There aren't many young people that have movement disorders that could be in the military.
Stop.
And then,
Stop for a second.
a lot of people have...
Stop. You know why they're talking about this? So the med board in the military? Because the White House is actually trying to say that the Parkinson's disease expert was going over there to consult on like post-traumatic stress and brain injuries with soldiers, because there are so many soldiers and Marines who serve at the White House, right? Hiding behind the fighting men and women in uniform. How many? It's a scam again. Ooh, so many times. Again, my son Bo is in the military. You know, this kind of crap. The Parkinson's expert visited with Joe Biden's personal physician 8 times. Well, we're just talking about military guys with war injuries. You don't want to question that, do you? Oh, man, I feel like a real jerk right now talking about war injuries. Geez, okay, I'm sorry. Shut up. We're not doing that anymore. That doesn't work. Keep going.
Test. What exactly would that entail? What does that mean?
Now, that's the key, because word finding retrieval doesn't necessarily mean you don't know what you want to say. What I cannot comment on is his ability to make good decisions. His motor symptoms are degenerating. He has Parkinsonism. That is a fact. You know, he has degeneration of the brain. Show me the MRI. Show me he doesn't. You know, put your money where your mouth is. He definitely has it. But the problem is, when you look at his situation, you can't say, oh, I know for a fact that because he didn't retrieve the word, he didn't know what he wanted to say. And that's why both him and Trump should take the 4-hour neuropsychological testing, which is the hallmark test for cognitive performance.
What do you do in this test?
A lot of things. So, for example, they may have you say as many words as you can in a minute that start with F. Block building, retrieval. I may say cup and have you recall it 3 minutes later. Trail drawing. These are done with a professional PhD in neuropsychology. It has nothing to do with psychiatry. And we can tell if you have vascular.
It's 4 hours long?
4 hour. It's a full day. We tell people bring a snack. It is a full day. And so not the MOCA, which was a bedside test that President Trump took. You know, these are tests that are screening tests. They don't rule in, you know, if you do great.
There's no way to sort of lie in this test, to sort of ace it even though you're sick.
No way. This one it will come out in the wash. For example, if I do the bedside exam to an accountant and I ask them, what's 100 minus 7? Even the worst neurodegenerative patient, if they worked at a high education level or something like that, is going to get that right. But in the 4-hour test, it will come out.
Finally, I mean, you said you're a Democrat, you're a doctor. You sound like you're frustrated with what the White House is saying.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, because, you know, I'm an American before everything. And I look at it and say, when I used to see Russia, Soviet Union, North Korea, when they just make outrageous things, you know, like when North Korea can't keep the lights on and they say, oh, you know, it was some faulty power thing. I kind of hate that kind of stuff. They had 4 years. My own party had 4 years to find, you know, this was a wreck in slow motion. And they had 4 years to find, out of 350 Americans, one person that could take the place. And here we are the day before school trying to do the homework and replace a guy who's got a neurodegenerative disease.
Dr. Pitts, we thank you for joining Top Story. And again, I know you've never examined President Biden. I want to say that you've never spoken to President Biden, but you're going off what you've seen on television and interviews and all of your expertise.
Yeah.
Doctor, we appreciate that.
Yeah, I like it. Dr. Pitts. Got to look this guy up just to say it all. You can tell from across the mall. If you were at the shopping mall, nobody goes to the mall. You could tell. It's interesting, and I give Yamas credit. He did say a couple of silly things that I might have said. You know, hey, you know, I have an uncle, and he, you know, like he's like, no, you're wrong. What about Joe Biden's stutter? No, that's a legend. That's a myth, actually, that they made up to cover up another thing. A lot of parallels between what's happening right now and 1987. When Joe lied and got busted, but he didn't just quit the race. He did ultimately, but then he put out a bunch of fake stories, just like he's doing now. More comparison on that and some other very, very unique and intriguing insights right here. Be right back.
Greg Kelly. This is the Greg Kelly Show.
The American public is not going to move away from me as an average voter. And again, I'm here for 2 reasons, pal. One, to rebuild the economy for hardworking middle-class people, give everybody a shot. Just a straight shot. Everybody gets a fair chance. Number one. Number two, remember all this talk about how I don't have the black support? Come on, give me a break. Come with me. Watch. I'm getting so frustrated by the elites No, I'm not talking about you guys. But
Watch. Stop. You know what? He's telling us he has Alzheimer's right here. He's telling us he has Alzheimer's. Let's see here. He loses his thoughts, and is quite easily angered. That's a component of Alzheimer's. And also, he seems to be in denial about the whole damn thing. In denial. I mean, he's angry, he's in denial. The person with dementia or Alzheimer's truly believes they are fine and can be angered by anyone believing they are not. And then Joe is losing his mind. This has been documented for years now. He's one of the nastiest people around. And the staff are absolutely terrified of him. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. This is just the parallels between this and 1987 are so rich. Hey, here's something. I know it's... Who remembers Judge Ludig? Donald Trump and his allies are a clear and present danger to American democracy. Judge Ludig, Michael Ludig, he was on the appeals court a long time ago. For some reason, he was considered just right for the Supreme Court. But W did not put him on the Supreme Court, and he was so mad he quit being a judge. And he went to Boeing, the Boeing company. Now, Boeing just made that lemon of an airplane, the 737 MAX, right? Has a habit of crashing all over the place. And they just pleaded guilty to criminal fraud. Criminal fraud. Boeing did yesterday. Now, I was curious. Judge Ludig, who said that you and me are a clear and present danger to American democracy, because we're Donald Trump supporters, right? Allies, supporters. And what does clear and present danger mean? That means you can actually violate the law to enforce the law. You can violate the law to protect what you believe is national security. So they could neutralize us. Neutralize. What does that mean? They could deprive us of our rights. They could deprive us of, I don't know, our liberty, lock us up, kill us. And Judge Ludig, he rose to fame because he was one of the Republicans calling for Trump's ouster after January 6th. Well, I'd like to see this guy in jail because guess what? Why do I bring up the whole Boeing situation? He was general counsel. He was the top lawyer at Boeing while they engaged in fraud that resulted in the death of hundreds of passengers. This is according to Boeing. They just pleaded guilty. You don't think the lawyer was involved in the fraud? Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's you, Judge Ludig. Donald Trump and his allies. No, you are. You are clear and present danger. You may have killed people. Hey, how about that one? He killed people and we're the danger. Ludig, L-U-T-T-I-G. He follows me on Twitter. I'm about to send him a very provocative message.
You're listening to The Greg Kelly Show.
I think I'm chatting with the future president of the United States, Brilyn Hollyhand.
Yes, sir.
I'm sure you get that all the time. His new book is One Generation Away, Why Now is the Time to Restore American Freedom. Brilyn is, he's the chairman of the RNC's inaugural Youth Advisory Council, and he happens to be 18 years old, but, you feel like you're talking to a two-term senator who's thinking about running for president. Brilyn, welcome. How are you?
Greg, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be here in New York. My dad and I are big fans of your show, so this is a true honor to be here.
Well, I so appreciate that. Brilyn, let's talk first things first. How did you get to this stage? You're 18 years old. You're of national importance. You got a book under your belt. We were talking a moment ago. You weren't always political in the earlier part of your life. What was the big moment that made you a political person?
Yeah, so I was 10 years old. It was the 2016 election, and I walked into the living room one night, and that fiery debate between Trump and Hillary was on. It was the one where he said, "I'll put you in jail." And I was like, this is so fascinating. I'm used to growing up watching politicians on the news, be this poised, again, politician, not actually be a relatable, authentic American. And I was like, this is fascinating. So started paying attention to politics because of Trump. It wasn't until the age of 11, the next summer, where I actually got involved. And I was watching the news a little bit more then, paying attention, being a citizen of the country, and said, look, there's a lot going on with the country. There's a lot wrong with America. But don't worry, the adults are going to handle it. It'll be fine. By the time I get up there, the adults have got it. Greg, I kept paying attention, and the adults didn't have it. They didn't handle it, so I got involved.
Wow. I admire your confidence and, your surety about the issues. I mean, you're a young man.
Thank you.
I take it you haven't bought a house yet.
Not yet, no, sir.
So it's there's something else going on here. I mean, like as it you're God driven or something like that. You've been anointed. I mean, you have very firm ideas about things that you haven't experienced yet, and I think you're right on everything. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, we were just talking a moment ago about my family. I didn't grow up in a political family at all. My mom was a teacher, dad's in construction, not really a political upraising where I was at fundraisers every night, or I was kind of groomed to do this. Like you said, it was just kind of a God thing. And I constantly tell people, and I know you hear the same thing when you talk to people out, is that they don't have hope in America. They constantly hear this phrase of, what's the future going to be like? Is my generation going to grow up in a free America? That's why we wrote the book. But I constantly hear there's no hope. And my answer every time, Greg, is my hope's in Jesus Christ alone, not in any DC bureaucrat. And that's what we tell people over and over alone. That's where we're trying to get our generation back to.
Wow. And I'm sure you see the hand of God busy at work right now. I mean, things are happening that are just kind of awesome,
yes,
right?
They are.
One generation away. Why now is the time to restore American freedom? Okay, what? It sounds obvious, but maybe not. I don't think I can articulate it. Why now? Why is now the time to restore American freedom?
Yeah, so we really believe that my generation coming into this election has the opportunity to flip the script. A Republican president has not won, or presidential candidate has not won the youth vote since 2003. That's a long time. That was well before I was born. And I think that right here, right now, President Trump, currently with an 8-point lead with the youth vote, has the opportunity to make history in November because we can instill these values again. Because my generation's waking up and saying, okay, look, I can't even tell you the amount of people that I've had come up on campus speeches saying, I voted for Biden in 2020, or my parents or grandparents voted for Biden in 2020, and I can't make that same mistake again. I mean, Greg, you mentioned housing a second ago. You remember growing up, graduating from high school, renting your first apartment, going to college, paying expenses kind of independently for the first time. My peers and I are in that era of life, going into that era of life the next few years, and we're going into the era in a Biden administration and a Biden economy, more importantly. That's waking us all up. Another point, I think COVID really radicalized my generation to become conservative. We saw big government at work and in its worst way. Big government told my generation we were stuck out of school for a year and a half. We were horrible, evil human beings who wanted to go visit grandma at Thanksgiving. We had to strap a diaper to our face. We really want to push back against that and get conservative leadership in government again.
Can you tell me a little bit about the RNC's inaugural Youth Advisory Council? I mean, it sounds very august. I mean, what does that actually mean? What are you going to do?
Sure. Yeah. So I started it myself, founded it with the RNC's help in November of 2022. You remember those midterms that Republicans kind of underperformed, and I was frustrated with the party's lack of support then. And to listen, the RNC has to reach out to Gen Z, and they did. They listened. And it's so great now to work directly with the Trump family, now that the RNC of Trump campaign emerged. Our goal is simple, to reach out to young voters, to have conversations. Previously, the RNC has not been doing that. We're registering young voters on campuses. We're having conversations. Next week, convention. President Trump will be there. We're having roundtables with young people. We're excited to actually talk to them, which is important.
What's the long-term plan for you? Obviously, you got a little thing called college first. Are you going to go?
I am going to college.
What do you want to be? What do you want to do? I mean, you could be head of the party someday, head of the country. Where's all this going?
I would say that the current dream, and this could change, the current dream would be to stay out of politics. It's a little too dirty, but to be the next Greg Kelly with some nighttime primetime show after you retire, of course, not to take anything. And to be able to have that opportunity to talk to people, to have conversations, to be in this role for 60, 70 years instead of a 4 to 8 year term, to be able to actually bring about real change, long-term change.
Do you think you can bring about long-term change by being a commentator?
I do.
Yes,
I do.
What about... Sometimes I'm frustrated by that because, no, seriously, we've been calling out Joe Biden since the campaign of 2020.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, this man is in decline.
Yes.
And I still believe that the mainstream media, the dominant media, unless they recognize something, you have to go out of your way to engage conservative media. If you're just going about your business, you're going to be bombarded with the messages that everything's fine.
Yes.
And that's a big frustration of mine. Care to help me with that?
No, absolutely. The same questions you've been asking on your program every single day since Biden first ran in 2020 are finally now being asked by the White House press corps. Where have they been for the past 4 years, Greg? I mean, you're exactly right. It's just conservative media doing this in a bubble. We've got to get out there and have this conversation because the mainstream media sure isn't doing it. They've been covering for Biden this whole time. Now that they've gotten the talking points from the DNC that Biden's out, they're like, oh, let's do something else. Let's kind of attack him a little bit. We saw Karine Jean-Pierre's press conference. was just, she was lambasted by the media. Like, oh, where did this come from? They completely forgot that Trump's 4 press secretaries got that treatment every single day of the week, regardless of what crisis or, controversy was going on.
I know. And I see the correspondence. Oh, wow. They're really stepping out. No, even I'm not impressed because, as you mentioned, now they have cover. Yes, they have protection to do this. So, all right. Vice President, who do you think it's going to be?
So I would love a Ben Carson. Ben Carson's a really good friend. He endorsed my book, One Generation Away, but he also sat down for 2 interviews. One when he was HUD secretary, that was his last interview before he left office, and more recently when he had a book come out. And so he's been really, really good to me. I think Tim Scott would be great as well. I think he's kind of a young up and coming, but there's so many options out there. And again, I know people try to predict all the time. You see the New York Times come out with, oh, today we think the VP is going to be this. Nobody knows except Trump. You know Trump very well. And you know that Trump's made this decision. He's kept it very tight. We've been told he'll make an announcement before, early next week. And I'm really interested to see because I think he has the opportunity to win over young voters with his VP pick.
That would be amazing. Could be Mrs. Hollyhand. Do you mind joining us for a moment? Diego's going to turn on your microphone. And hi, Mrs. Hollyhand.
Hi there.
What's your first name?
Lee.
Lee, you told me. And Lee, how did you do it? Seriously, I have a 2-year-old and a 4-year-old. And we'd like them to be, along these lines, well-adjusted in every way, it seems. What did you do?
Well, it's not from us at all. As Brilyn said, me nor my husband are political.
But the moorings, the faith. You got you had something to do with this.
That all starts in your home. Just taking your kids to church, teaching them about God. The home is where it starts. And people always want to, kind of put things on the backs of other people. The school has to do it, or your church has to do it. No, it all starts at home. And so I know when Brilyn first came to us and wanted to do this, it started out just him emailing just aunts and uncles. His first Truth Gazette email simply went to aunts and uncles. And from that, people started forwarding this email, this article he wrote. He wrote several articles, and we would send them out. And aunts and uncles started forwarding it. And from that, other people started saying, "Can I get added to your list?" And it just kind of has grown. And everything's just taken off. And each step of the way, my husband and I would kind of say, okay, here we are. We now have a website, and now we're going on TV shows or different parts of life. But we've tried to support him and be there for him. And like I said, this is just his passion, and we're supporting him just like you would support anybody that was into athletics or anything else. We said up front that people who play like travel ball, you'll go to whatever city they're playing ball in. You buy them whatever equipment they need. You do exactly what they need to do that sport. Well, this has been his passion, his sport. And so we've supported them all along the way.
I love it. Mm-hmm. And one more thing. How do you make going to church not an ordeal? Like, let's face it, my girls are kicking and screaming. You know what I mean? Like, you got to induce them. You got to coach them. I want them to, and I wonder, am I setting them up to reject it at some point? You know what I mean? To walk away and well, they have to figure it out like I figured it out. And quite frankly, I want them to not go through the journey I did because it was a long one and a rough one. And, I found out some pretty obvious things way too late. Sorry to put all this on your plate or your plate, Brilyn, but I don't know. Look, that's for another conversation, I guess. That's between me, God, and my family. Brilyn, so you're going to Milwaukee.
Yes,
and
sir.
President Trump, you want Ben Carson. Let's see, who's the next president of the next president of the United States? Who do you think is a real, for 2028?
Sarah Huckabee Sanders.
Great choice.
Yeah, I think she'd be amazing. She already can go head to head with the press. We saw that firsthand. And she'll have governing experience at that point because she'd be governor for at least 4, maybe 8 years of Arkansas. So again, very close friend, has come on my show again twice, taking the opportunity out of her time as press secretary and as governor to actually do an interview with an 11-year-old. That means a lot. That shows, she really cares about the future of the party and the future of the country. So she has my endorsement for sure.
Wow. Hey, do an interview with him. He's on your side for any office I run for. No, I get it. One generation away.
Yes,
Why
sir.
Now is the time to restore American freedom. All right. So I so appreciate this. You are a very impressive young man.
I appreciate that.
And don't start drinking. Don't start doing drugs. I obviously, all this stuff.
I totally agree.
Is there one area of your life where you think you need advice and you need help, where you are not precocious?
I would say that I could get some advice here on how to balance everything. Balancing a personal life and also doing commentary. That would be be some good advice to get from you because, having a family and then also having this gig as well, radio and TV. What's your advice there?
Actually, I need advice on that very issue. I can't help you. I have 90 free minutes in the morning, and that's it. And that's it. So, weekends are, weekends, but I'm just kind of bouncing around right now. So I'm still trying to figure it out. Brilyn Hollyhand, look for this guy on television. Where can we get your podcast, please?
Yeah. So the book's available right now. It released this morning. You can get signed copies at brylynbook.com. My podcast is available everywhere podcasts are available.
All right. Brilyn Hollyhand. Great stuff.
Thank you.
Remember us when, remember us when you get there. Thanks for being with us. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Greg Kelly. You're listening to The Greg Kelly Show.
Well, what an interesting young man, huh? And you don't really think of him as a young man. He's a peer. You know what I mean? He's like he's fully grown, it seems like, in every way. One generation away. Why now is the time to restore American freedom by Brilyn Hollyhand. Brilyn, Brilyn. His mom is really nice, Lee, and just great stuff there. He thinks it's going to be Dr. Carson. Could be. I don't know. I have no idea. And if you go through the list, they all have like major assets and they also have major vulnerabilities. Each one. Doug Burgum. We like Doug Burgum. He's great on TV. He's a governor. He's rich. He's successful. You can't get an abortion in North Dakota. Did you know that? You can't get an abortion there. It's like totally outlawed. Now, that's fine if you're pro-life, but that's not exactly necessarily what people want to talk about this general election, so that's a problem. Vance, I heard yesterday, called Trump a Nazi at some point, so that's a problem. Marco Rubio, I like Marco a lot, but he's just not distinguished enough. He's just not. He looks like he's in 8th grade. Brilyn looked like he was, like fully grown. There's something very adolescent about Marco. And I know these are topical. This is superficial, but a good chunk of politics is about this stuff, this vanity stuff. I wish it wasn't, but that's the way it is. Hello, Ron. What's on your mind? Hello. Yes, Ron. Well, never mind then. And please don't call with profanity. We hate that most of the time. Nate in the Bronx. Yes.
Yes, good afternoon. So pretty much I wanted to comment briefly on the French election and the apparent...
Free France! Free France! Vive la France! What do you want to say about that?
All right, so basically the same way they steal elections here in the United States, apparently you had a little chicanery that went on in the French election, whereby Macron's corrupt Renaissance party, the establishment party, that's allowing inflation to run rampant, immigrants to pour into the country unchecked, teamed up with communists, socialists, and a bunch of other left-wing rabble.
Hey, you're walking around the hospital right now, aren't you? You're doing errands while you're talking to me, aren't you? What are you doing?
I'm actually taking a break. I'm actually outside for the moment.
Yeah, but you're walking around. You're walking around. There's all kinds of stuff going on around you. I don't hear you very well. Well, look, what are you going to do? I mean, Macron, nobody likes him. The French don't like him, but he was able to eke out something. What do we do now?
Well, what we do now is actually in the next election, in 3 years, they're going to have a presidential election in France. If Marine Le Pen herself does not stand, there's a young rising star, speaking of young rising stars, Jordan Bardella, who's actually the youth leader.
Oh, he's 28 years old. Yeah, he's really young.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right, listen, I can't worry about France right now. We got our own problems here. You know what I mean, Nate? I'm sorry, I just can't get into it right now.
Yeah, I definitely hear you.
All right. What?
One final thing?
Yeah.
With regards to the media and how it just definitely slants all the issues and how it definitely has a determinative effect on U.S. elections, I just wanted to leave you one resource. It's called Who Rules America by National Vanguard Books. and enlist the names of the corporations, their officers, and most importantly, their left-wing political agenda in slanting our elections here in the United States.
All right, I'll read it right away. Thank you. Thank you very much. The other thing is, wow, it's really wild to look at the New York Times and hear them out loud say that Joe Biden has to go. One of the main organs of the state that's been covering for this guy, all the editorial writers say, let's see here, it's time, Joe, it's time. The Democrat Party must speak the plain truth to the president. It's not a party that actually does that very often. Hold on, I got to put in my little password. Does your wife know your password? Does your wife know your password? I was getting a laptop the other day, an iPad, and she's supervising the whole thing between me and the guy. And she goes, "Just use my password." I said, "What? No, no, I'm going to use my convoluted 15-digit password. I can't use yours. I can't. I mean, everybody's got something they don't want, right?" I didn't feel. I felt. I think it's. I would never go into my wife's phone. Would you? I hear that millennials do that. They just leave their phone around without any kind of protection. All right, Steve. Hello. While I get this thing going on, what's up, Steve?
Mr. Kelly, your interview with that young man was Nixon Frostonian.
Hey,
excellent.
Hey, Steve. What's your real name here, huh? Come on. Come on.
Steve.
Yeah, Steve. Yeah, where do you live now, Steve? You're playing all kinds of games with me. How long will it be until you mention Pat Buchanan? Huh?
I'm not mentioning.
I know. I already did it for you. Didn't I?
But could I make a suggestion with the VP?
What?
The VP has to be somebody who can deliver tons of votes from the industrial Midwest. That is your VP candidate. Anybody else will not be acceptable. That's your big battleground states right there.
Well, number one, some of the big industrial states, right, like Ohio, right? You would say that's pretty industrial, right?
Right.
Is it? I guess Michigan. Not as much. Michigan. Well, Ohio is no longer a swing state. Michigan, who the hell could he get from Michigan? Hey, by the way, choosing somebody from the state doesn't mean anything, though. We know that from Al Gore. Al Gore in 2000 lost his home state, Tennessee. He lost it. You could pick somebody from Missouri. You could pick a red candidate, a conservative candidate from Missouri, and the state may not go red. St. Louis, so many people there. It's got that blue center and the red on the outskirts, but the people live in the blue. Hey, thanks, Steve, whatever. Look at this. For voters who held out hope that President Biden's failure to communicate during last month's debate was an aberration, the intervening days have offered little comfort. Donald Trump's candidacy for a second term poses a grave threat to American democracy. Mr. Biden, instead of campaigning vigorously to disprove doubts and demonstrate that he can beat Mr. Trump, has maintained a scripted and controlled schedule of public appearances. He has largely avoided taking questions from voters or journalists, the kinds of interactions that reveal his limitations and caused him so much trouble on the debate stage and for the past 3 years, and you guys covered up for him. And when he has cast aside his teleprompter, most notably during the 22-minute interview with George Stephanopoulos, he has continued to appear as a man in decline. The president, elected in 2020 as an antidote to Mr. Trump's malfeasance and mendacity, is now trying to defy reality. For more than a year, voters have made it unquestionably clear in surveys and interviews that they harbor significant doubts about Mr. Biden's physical and mental fitness for office. He has disregarded these concerns, the concerns of voters and his fellow citizens. This is the New York Times, baby. Joe, it's probably over.
Hi, it's Lou Dobbs for Priority Gold, America's precious metals dealer. These are volatile times with high inflation, soaring debt, wars on multiple continents, and rising financial stress. Central banks are buying gold to diversify their reserves, so are many Americans. Call Priority Gold and find out how precious metals can help you diversify your portfolio. They're highly rated and happy to help. Call 1-866-303-6357 or get a free gold guide at PriorityGoldGuide.com. That's PriorityGoldGuide.com.